Debate.
Albert Edmonton.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to rise to speak on Bill C-30, the Budget Implementation Act. The Liberals, after failing to deliver a budget for 2 years, finally got around to delivering one a few months ago. And I've got to say, the budget delivers. The only problem is it delivers in all the wrong ways. The Liberals have delivered a historic deficit of $354 billion, the largest deficit in Canadian history. The Liberals have delivered a mountain of debt, with the national debt projected to reach $1.4 trillion by the end of this year. And to put that staggering figure in some context, the Liberals have managed to nearly double the national debt in the span of less than 2 years. This Liberal budget delivers yet another near-historic deficit for this year of $154.7 billion, with deficit after deficit after deficit projected year after year after year, with no plan whatsoever to see a return to a balanced budget. Now, Madam Speaker, this government says, as one of the excuses that they peddle for the massive deficits and massive debt, is that it's all about COVID. That COVID has necessitated all of the spending. Except, Madam Speaker, that simply isn't true. Indeed, when one looks at program spending for 2021-22 of $475.6 billion, only a little more than 10% of that is attributable to COVID. And speaking of $475.6 billion in program spending, that represents a 40.5% increase in spending from 2019-2020 levels. That's right, Madam Speaker, a 40.5% increase in spending in 2 years under these Liberals. In the face of this massive, reckless spending, to paraphrase the great, late U.S. former President Ronald Reagan, one could accuse this government of spending like drunken sailors. But as President Reagan would say, at least the drunken sailors were spending their own money. The same cannot be said for this government, because, Mr. Speaker, whose money are they spending? Well, it turns out, Madam Speaker, that a lot of what they're doing is printing money in an unprecedented manner. The Bank of Canada is buying the government's debt. $354 billion deficit last year. Of that, the Bank of Canada bought over $300 billion, or over 80%. And, Madam Speaker, we have seen, in terms of the supply of money, an increase of some 20% over this past year alone. That represents an increase in the supply of money that we have not seen in this country since 1974, nearly 50 years ago. And, Madam Speaker, there is a price to be paid for all of this borrowing and all of the spending. I mean, we hear the excuses from the government, their justification to say that now is a better time than ever to borrow and spend because interest rates are low. Well, Madam Speaker, interest rates will not always be low, and it must be said that this government doesn't have control entirely what interest rates will be, that market forces also help determine what interest rates will be. But putting that aside, there is a cost being borne by everyday middle-class Canadians today in the way of inflation. Indeed, when one looks at the consumer price index for April, we saw an increase of 3.4%. That represented the highest recording since September of 2011, a 10-year record in terms of the consumer price index, only to be broken 1 month later when the consumer price index rose by 3.6%. Madam Speaker, that has hit Canadians in the wallet and hit Canadians hard in the wallet. We have seen the cost of just about everything go up in terms of homeowners' replacement costs, an 11.3% increase from last year, representing the largest annual increase since 1987. We have seen, of course, housing prices skyrocket 42% in the span of 1 year. We have seen gasoline increase by about 50% from last year. When we talk about essentials like groceries, the Canada Food Price Report projects that the average family of four will pay $695 more in groceries this year from last year. And that, Madam Speaker, represents the largest projected increase in the cost of groceries since the report was first published more than 10 years ago. Now, I know for our silver spoon Prime Minister and other Liberal elites, $695 is chump change. It means nothing to them. But, Madam Speaker, for everyday Canadians, at a time when 53% of Canadians are $200 away from insolvency, $695 can make the difference between putting food on the table and being able to stay in one's home. Madam Speaker, for a budget in which we've heard the Finance Minister talk so much about stimulus that, by the way, the Parliamentary Budget Officer said was totally miscalibrated, for all the talk about recovery, I say, Madam Speaker, where are the jobs? Where are they? 200,000 jobs lost in April, 68,000 jobs lost in May. Madam Speaker, Canada has the second highest unemployment rate in the G7, the sixth highest unemployment rate out of 37 countries in the OECD. Madam Speaker, for a government that has spent so much, they have failed to deliver as Canadians fall further and further behind. This is a failed budget from a failed Liberal government. Hear, hear.